Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when and where you are. Welcome to another Festival in a Box 3.0 tasting session. This is the Jura 7-Wood session, which we've been very much looking forward to. And I'm delighted to say that we have actually got the man himself, Mark Bruce, the home brands manager based on the island of Jura itself, to join us today. So I'll just bring Mark in now. Mark, good morning. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Eddie. How are you? Pleasure to be here.
I'm all the better for seeing you. And I was just saying to you a little bit earlier, so impressed with the internet connection, given where you are and how remote you are.
Yeah, it's good now. As I said, 5G's installed. We've got super fast internet. There's no wind or rain outside, so it's full steam ahead.
I love the fact that internet is weather dependent.
It still is, believe it or not. Yes.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on. It's really great to see you, and really looking forward to getting stuck into the 7-Wood. But listen, why don't you tell everyone at home a little bit about yourself and how you got into whiskey and how you got to being in Jura? Because I think I detect a slight Antipodean accent as well. So quite interested to hear your story.
Yeah, that's correct. Originally from just outside of Sydney, so west of Sydney in Australia. I was fortunate enough to spend some time traveling around Europe, developed an interest in wine and spirits, and went off to study that at university. Given an opportunity to work in wine, and then with the wonderful company of William Grants for a few years, before coming across to work as a sales manager here in London for White and Mackay. Now, I was given the opportunity to come and visit Jura a few years ago as part of a brand immersion experience. We send our employees to varying, parts of Scotland to visit our wonderful distilleries, and it was my turn to come and see Jura. Having spent 4 or 5 days up here in the spring, I completely fell in love and rushed home to tell my partner that, if there was ever a job opportunity up on Jura, I should be applying for it. And 6 months later, that actually happened. Believe it or not, I was the lucky one given the opportunity. And I've been here, just before COVID, right? So a little over 2 years.
Wow, that's so you've been there through the whole pandemic. How's it been on? Because obviously, what's the population of Jura at the moment?
Yeah,
not including sheep.
Or deer, right?
Yeah.
We the population sort of fluctuates anywhere between about 200 and 250. It's sitting quite comfortably at the moment at about 225, 230. And, people come and go depending on their current situation. But of all the places you could be, and as opposed to being in a 2-bedroom apartment in London throughout the duration of lockdown, I consider myself to be quite lucky to be up here. I know that's not the case for everyone. So, yeah.
No, it's not, but it's quite comforting to know that you're safe and sound on the Isle of Jura. It's great.
Yeah, we all are.
Oh, that's great to hear. Well, I'm sure you're missing visitors though, because obviously, tourism is very important to you guys.
It's absolutely crucial to the island's economy. The tourists that come and visit every year, of which there is about 10,000 that come to our distillery alone, are spending anywhere between about £4 to £4.5 million a year in our local economy. So it's absolutely crucial that they return next year and more people come back to visit Jura when they can, because we're ready and waiting, right?
Yeah. And what's the best way to get to Jura these days?
There's 2 ways mainly. I mean, a lot of people fly in from various different parts of the world. They'll come into Glasgow and then on to Islay. Or you can drive across from the mainland, where you'll come down to the west coast of Scotland. You'll jump on the big Calmac ferry for a couple of hours, and that'll bring you across to Islay. if you can afford it, some people do come in via a helicopter, but most people sort of use the plane and the ferry much like we do. But for anyone that is over visiting Islay, I would encourage you all to set aside half a day and come and see Jura, because the experience couldn't be any more different. We're just across the water, but it's completely different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'll definitely be paying a visit the next time I'm up in those parts, which hopefully, fingers crossed, will be next year.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's should we dig into the 7 wood, because I'm really very keen to get tasting on this. So I'm gonna just pour myself love that sound. Pour myself a wee dram there. Oh, you've got some of yourself. Oh, yeah, good. You've got yourself some as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
very important. So, if you can maybe just tell us a bit about the 7 wood, because obviously this is a new bottling or newish to the market. So it's always exciting to have a new whiskey to talk about. So yeah, if you could just give us a bit of information about the 7 wood and what it's all about.
Yeah, of course. So just to sort of take a couple of steps back, I guess it's quite important to sort of remind everyone that, sort of best part of about 4 years ago now, Jura Whiskey decided to sort of make a few changes to the brand, and that also included the whiskey in itself. Our new master blender, Greg Glass, had come in from Compass Box, had sort of began to work very, very closely alongside Richard Patterson to develop what is now the new range of Jura whiskies. And as part of the initial launch of the Signature Series, which includes Jura Journey 10, 12, 7 Wood, and the 18, you sort of find this wonderful whiskey right smack in the middle of it all. And it's a wonderful example, I always think, of how Greg Glass, our blender, approaches whiskey. He's got this mad kind of Willy Wonka workbench style of approach to experimenting with wood and spirit and everything else in between, right? And this was actually a project that was initially started by Richard Patterson more than a decade ago. Up there in Invergordon and across our distilleries within the White Mackay portfolio, you have Richard Patterson experimenting with more than 600 different types of wood and casts, etc. Within that, there was this experiment going on with French oak, and Greg comes in, grabs it by the horns, and turns it into what we have here today. And this whiskey can essentially be as simple or complicated as you need it to be or want it to be. 7 wood is referring to the 7 types of wood used to mature the whiskey. Initial maturation for pretty much everything we do at Jura Whiskey is in ex-bourbon casks, good quality American white oak coming out of the US. And the other 6 different types of wood are sourced from various regions, various forests within France, whether it be Vosges, Le Berchange, Allier, you name it. We're sort of working very closely with the Coopers, Mills, and the Forestry Commission out there in France to get hold of what is the best wood that we can buy, of course, at a reasonable price. Trees which are more than 100 to 200 years old. Individual sections of these trees are bid on and purchased by us, run through the mills, and more often than not air dried for anywhere between about 2 to 3 years before the casks are assembled, brought over to Scotland, and we go about finishing or maturing our whiskey in these different types of wood. I often get asked about sort of level of toasting and charring and things like that. We would be looking at medium to medium plus. So in terms of flavors and textures and where this whiskey is going, it's much more complex, much more dynamic than what you would initially expect or what you would expect from our other whiskeys within the core range. And have you tried it?
I'm just about to taste. I've been nosing it away.
Yeah.
Getting my taste buds ready.
Yeah.
It smells extremely kind of luxurious and spicy.
Most definitely. And if you were to really drill down into the varying regions of France where we're bringing the wood from, the majority of the French oak is coming from either Limousin, which is down in the southwest of France, or Vosges, which is in the northeast. And they sort of make up the bulk of the casks being made. Initially, this project actually started out being all new oak, but what has happened over the course of the sort of last 4 or 5 years is we've found ourselves drawing on those same casks again, refilling. So it's a combination of new oak, first and second. All of the casks have only ever held Jura whiskey though. And that's an important note to touch on, because when you dive into the whiskey, it's incredibly well balanced, and yet it doesn't move too far from our house style. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to look for. Plenty of bright fruit. It's nice and sweet up front. And then there's layers to work through on the 7-wood, which I really, really like to explore, because every time I try it, it's different, which is quite exciting.
And different times of day and what you've been eating and all that kind of thing. I mean, in the interests of transparency, it's just before midday here and there. So the palate's reasonably fresh and you know, ready to accept lots of flavor, which that definitely has. I mean, it's a real mouthful of spice and tropical fruits and yeah,
most definitely.
And it goes on forever. You know, the finish is super long.
It really does. And we've positioned it really well within our range of whiskies that are really, this whiskey is really starting to appeal to people like yourselves and clubs like yourselves. Those that have perhaps tried Jura Journey or the 10 or the 12 and are looking for something a little bit more interesting to explore. And I'm glad you sort of you touched on the fact that there's lots of bright, fresh fruit up front, very typical of our spirit that runs off those massive great stills in the still house. And as I said, there's layers of flavors just sort of being built in behind that. Nice and sweet, a little bit of spice, toffee, milk chocolate, cloves, those sorts of things going on.
I'm going to add a touch of water to mine just to tease a few more aromas out, hopefully. What's your feeling about adding water or not adding water? Is it something you do?
It most definitely is. We have some very exciting cask strength whiskies being released early next year, and as part of that, you know, one of the best part of my jobs is being able to get into the warehouse with the distillery manager Graham Logan and start sampling, right? And most definitely, I think it's a personal choice. If you would like to add a little bit of water to the glass, then by all means, go for it. Just start with a very small amount, though, as opposed to an ice cube or something like that, which sometimes
because you can't take it out once you put it in, right?
Exactly.
You can try adding more whiskey to it, but then you end up trying to level it off, and you end up with a massive glass of stuff that you
watered down whiskey.
I'm getting even more in the way, like almost like apple tartatin or something, you know.
More often than not, when people add a little bit of water to this, they do describe it as opening up. So, you know, great suggestion. It might even be a case now of adding a drop or two and seeing where this goes.
That's very nice indeed, Mark. Very nice. Now, listen, while we're enjoying that dram, and I'm sure you've told this story over and over, but it'd be great to hear a bit about the distillery itself, because obviously it goes back a long way. Many of the whiskies we're featuring in this box are quite new, and certainly you know, the likes of Jura are, you know, quite historic in their nature. So could you maybe peel back the drams of time and take us back to when Jura was established and a bit about its story?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're right in the fact you say that this distillery, Jura Distillery, goes back a long way. In fact, it goes all the way back to 1810. And it's fairly unique in the fact that it ran somewhat successfully for the first 90 years of its inception, before closing and sort of going through what was essentially a dormant period of time. But whether you're aware or not, the distillery is an integral part of life here on the island. We are one of the major employers. We are one of the major tourist attractions, which we've touched on. So sort of having the Jura go through, sort of the First War, the Second World War, and everything in between, there really was a need to re-establish the distillery. And a plan was hatched in the late 50s between a number of different landowners. William Dillon Evans, which was a distillery designer and architect at the time. I believe he played a role in Craig Ellicky Distillery as well. They all got around a table and came up with the idea of re-establishing the Jura Distillery. And it reopened in 1963, and we've been producing whiskey ever since under a number of different owners. We do sit within the White Mackay portfolio. And as I said, it really is an integral part to life here on Jura. There's always something to look forward here. We do everything we can to support the community. And of course, we welcome, sort of people from all around the world to come and listen to our story and try our whiskey, of course. Second largest employer on the island, so we employ best part of about 20 people, which then go on to support their families, of course. And if you really do start to tally those numbers up, it's a fair percentage of the 30 people that are living on Jura at the moment.
Yeah. It's a fascinating story. So in terms of, obviously the Seven Wood is a new bottling, and you've been telling us about Greg Glass and his experiments. I know Greg from his Compass Box days, and followed his progress with much interest. He's a lovely guy. Now, is there more to come? I'm suspecting yes.
It really is.
What's coming, and what should we expect?
Well, I was umming and ahhing about whether or not I should say this, and I think I'm allowed to.
Please do.
There's a lot to look forward to, and what we've really seen, I think, as a whiskey and as a brand, is over the course of the last couple of years, Greg has been able to really cement himself within the business. And the most exciting thing about Greg is the fact that he is absolutely nuts in terms of plans and innovation and experiments and all the rest of it. In fact, Greg rang me not too long ago. He was in his car. I had no idea where he was going. And he was saying this, that, and all the rest of it. And whenever Greg speaks to you, you just kind of hold on, right? Everything's going over your head, but you try and pick out what you understand and sort of let go what you don't. And during the phone call, he went on to describe the fact that he had a 5-litre barrel of Jura whiskey in the back of his car, which had actually came from cognac. And that's just a very small example of some of the things I think we've got to look forward to in the future. I know that we are doing a lot of work with beer and IPAs in particular. There is a big piece of work being done right now on Scottish oak, which is being looked at across the Whiskey Works portfolio as well. We have wood air drying at the moment up at one of our warehouses as you come in to the village. That wood itself is from Jura over in France, the region of Jura, wonderful winemaking region. We are working with some very exciting bits and pieces coming out of the US. And we've got something very exciting to look forward to. It's going to be released next year, alongside a little bit more of a development on the rum cask release that was put into the UK market a little bit earlier on this year in the summer, which was available via Tesco. What we're starting to see is some of those whiskies maturing and really becoming quite exciting. So there'll be some age statements and things like that to look forward to soon.
Wow, sounds like there's a hell of a lot to look forward to, Mark.
There is, yeah. It's hard to keep up sometimes.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I don't know. Have you guys been getting out to do any events this year at all, or are you waiting till next year?
We've done bits and pieces. We're a fairly small team, including myself, and I sort of fit in and around some of the global ambassadors. They've been out to some of the major whiskey shows, but on the whole, we are taking a fairly cautious approach to spending time in markets and stuff like that with travel, etc. And I think on the whole, we will sort of be waiting to see what happens come the spring before putting, too many major plans in place. But as long as everything is okay and people are kept safe, we are, all guns blazing, as they say, come 2022.
Great. Well, hopefully we'll see you at one or two of our events from next year.
By all means, just invite us along. It's all you need to do. Just ask the question. I'd be more than happy to come along, or one of the team can come and see you, of course. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm sure a lot of our viewers come to our events, physical events. We managed to do 3 festivals this year, which we were very pleased to do. Obviously in the latter part of the year. So from, I think the first one, it was in the back end of September. Then we had Manchester in October, and then York finally in November, just a few weeks ago. So baby steps, as they say, and hopefully situations allow for more next year. And yes, obviously we'd love to have you along. Anyway,
we'd also love to have you come and visit as well. So we do have groups, we do have clubs and that come and visit us. So if you're ever interested at all in organising a trip, you've all the wonderful distilleries on Isla to see. You can add them, and you've got a fantastic few days, right?
I think you might have caused an avalanche of emails into the inbox to say, "Can we take Mark up on his offer?" Yeah, well, we'll definitely be considering that. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of, obviously, pandemic aside, I'm sure you've done a fair bit of traveling in your time, and you get out to see other markets and see what's going on in the whiskey world. Is there anything out there, putting your Jura hat aside for the moment, that excites you in the world of whiskey, and any distilleries or brands that are really exciting you at the moment?
Most definitely. I do get asked this question a fair bit, and for me, I think one of the distilleries that is doing something really quite exciting are the guys out in Seattle in the US, Westlands, in particular working with a native species of oak called Gariana, and they are just really releasing some very, very exciting whiskies at the moment. They don't come cheap, but in terms of complexity and a story, and being able to really sit and think about what it is that you're enjoying in the glass, I think the guys at Westland are doing an absolute fantastic job. If you can hear that, by the way, that's just a forklift being started up. They'll be filling soon, so the guys will just be moving some stuff around.
I thought it was the coffee machine. Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad you've arranged that for us, and we feel.
I'll see if it gets any worse. I'll go and tell them to hold up for a moment.
No, it's absolutely fine. It brings it even more to life where you are. Now, final question, Mark, if you wouldn't mind. Now, obviously, you're a big whiskey fan, as we all are. But is there any other tipple that you turn to aside from whiskey that you enjoy and will be enjoying?
I do try. I really do try. In fact, a good friend of mine sent me a wonderful tequila that had been finished in Speyside whiskey casks. I had very recently. Enjoyable, really enjoyable. But I think if it's not whiskey and if it's not done in this kind of way or with guests that come and visit, I really can't go by just a half and a half or the Hoff and Hoff. I think there is just so much to explore in the world of Scotch, as well as, you know, all the other whiskies around the world, and all the wonderful beers that are being made now. And there's something about taking a moment wherever you are to just sit down, soak in the atmosphere, soak in what's happening around you, and enjoy just that wonderful partnership of both a beer and a whiskey, right? If it doesn't quite work, you've got the excuse to dip back into what's behind the bar and ask for another one. So that's sort of generally my plan when I walk into an establishment.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a very solid plan. Anyway, listen, Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you, and thanks once again for agreeing to appear, and thank you for the 7 wood as well. I'm sure everyone at home is really enjoying that. But for now, I'm going to say Slanjavar, and have a great Christmas and New Year.
You too.
If anyone's watching this after the Christmas and New Year, don't worry, it's still relevant. Next Christmas and New Year. But thanks again, Mark, and take care of yourself over there, and look forward to catching up with you in person at some point.
Yeah, we'll see you all in 2022, right? Until then.
That's the hope. Cheers, Mark.
Cheers, Eddie. Take care.
You too.